The air outside was warm, the kind of early summer heat that makes you want to linger inside air-conditioned stores. Families pushed carts down bright aisles, couples browsed home goods, and teenagers drifted toward the electronics section. It was the kind of day when a Target store felt like the safest, most ordinary place in the world. But within the next hour, that illusion would be shattered. The calm before the storm. Security camera footage from that day paints a chilling picture. At 1:43 p.m., the suspect's vehicle, a dark blue SUV, pulled into the Target parking lot. Witnesses later recalled the driver's slow, deliberate movements. One shopper, a retired military veteran named Kevin Ramirez, would say, "I thought he was just looking for a spot, but something about him made me uneasy." Inside, the hum of scanners and background music masked any sense of danger. Parents compared prices on school supplies. A mother scolded her toddler for grabbing candy from a shelf, and the cashier at Lane 5 was joking with a regular customer. Then, at 1:51 p.m., the first sound of chaos ripped through the air. The first shots. The initial gunfire was so loud that several shoppers thought something had exploded in the stockroom. But within seconds, the truth became unmistakable. Shouts, screams, and the sound of carts tipping over echoed through the store. The suspect, later identified as 35-year-old Daniel Cole, entered through the main doors armed with a semi-automatic rifle. Surveillance footage shows him moving methodically down the main aisle, firing at random. His face was expressionless, cold, mechanical. One bullet struck a store employee instantly. Another hit a shopper in the checkout lane. Panic erupted. People abandoned carts, children were yanked into hiding by terrified parents, and others dropped to the floor, hoping to avoid the shooter's line of sight. The 911 calls flood in. By 1:53 p.m., the first frantic calls to 911 were coming in. "There's a man with a gun, he's shooting. We're at the Target on Riverside Drive. Please, people are hurt. Send police." Dispatchers immediately alerted the Austin Police Department. Units from less than 2 miles away were dispatched. But for those trapped inside, every second felt like a lifetime. Meanwhile, Daniel Cole continued moving deeper into the store. Witnesses say he didn't run. He walked, scanning each aisle as if searching for specific targets. A father's split-second decision. Near the toy section, 42-year-old Marcus Allen had brought his 8-year-old daughter to pick out a birthday gift. When the shots rang out, he shoved her behind a display of stuffed animals, whispering, "Stay down, baby. Don't move until I come back." Marcus ran toward the women's restroom where several shoppers were frozen in fear. He guided them into a back storage area, blocking the door with boxes. His quick thinking would later be credited with saving at least 6 lives. Police en route. Outside, the first police cruisers arrived just after 1:55 p.m. Officers took cover behind vehicles, listening to the bursts of gunfire inside. Tactical units were called, but the urgency was clear. This was an active shooter situation, and lives were slipping away by the minute. Inside, Daniel Cole's ammunition clip clicked empty for the first time. Witnesses say he reloaded calmly without rushing, almost as if he wanted to prolong the terror. What no one yet knew was why he was doing this. Was it random rage, personal vendetta, or something much darker? The answer would only come after the massacre was over, but by then, the damage would already be done. Saturday, April 15, 2023, began like any other weekend in Austin, Texas. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the city, and families flocked to the bustling Target store on South Lamar Boulevard. Parents pushed carts filled with snacks and school supplies, teenagers browsed electronics, and couples wandered the aisles planning home projects. It was the kind of ordinary scene that gave people a sense of safety, a place where danger felt far away. At 2:17 p.m., security footage showed a man stepping through the automatic doors. He wore a black hoodie pulled low over his face and carried a medium-sized duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Nothing about him screamed danger at first glance. Customers barely noticed him, but for the next 10 minutes, his quiet presence would transform into the kind of horror no one saw coming. Witnesses later told investigators that the man seemed to be pacing certain aisles, occasionally glancing over his shoulder. He wasn't holding any shopping items, just moving deliberately toward the store's central area. One employee remembered locking eyes with him for a moment. She described his gaze as cold, like he had already made up his mind about something terrible. At 2:28 p.m., everything changed. The man reached into his duffel bag, pulled out an AR-15 style rifle, and raised it toward the nearest group of shoppers. The first shots echoed through the store like firecrackers. Customers froze for a split second before the reality of the situation sank in. This was an active shooter. Panic erupted instantly. Some shoppers screamed and ran for the exits. Others dove behind shelves, clutching their children and trying to stay hidden. Employees scrambled to trigger the store's emergency protocols, calling 911 and locking stockroom doors. But the chaos was overwhelming. The shooter moved quickly, firing indiscriminately toward anyone in sight. The sound of gunfire bounced off the walls, making it impossible to tell where the danger was coming from. Security cameras captured the chilling image of a young mother pulling her toddler into an aisle just seconds before bullets tore through the shelves behind them. Inside the store, the air was thick with fear. People whispered prayers under their breath, while others clutched their phones, sending desperate messages to loved ones. "There's a shooter in Target. I love you." The 911 call center in Austin was flooded with reports. The dispatcher's voice, calm but urgent, relayed the situation to police units racing toward the scene. Multiple shots fired inside Target, South Lamar location. Suspect armed with a rifle. Numerous victims down. By 2:34 p.m., just 6 minutes after the first shot, Austin police officers arrived on scene. They could still hear gunfire inside as they assembled near the main entrance. Officers in tactical gear prepared to enter, knowing every second mattered. But inside, for the terrified people hiding behind shelves and inside dressing rooms, 6 minutes felt like an eternity. Every footstep, every rustle of movement, could mean the shooter was coming closer. What had started as an ordinary afternoon of shopping had turned into a nightmare. And for those trapped inside, there was no guarantee they'd make it out alive. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. The moment the first 911 call crackled through the Austin Police Department's dispatch system, chaos erupted, but it was a chaos with a plan. Within 90 seconds, the first patrol units were racing toward the Target store on North Lamar Boulevard, lights flashing, sirens wailing. Officers knew they were heading into an active shooter situation, the most dangerous call in law enforcement. The suspect was still inside. Coordinated chaos. Police body camera footage later revealed the tense, adrenaline-fueled minutes as officers approached the scene. With rifles drawn, they pushed into the building, stepping over shattered glass and past terrified customers crouching behind overturned carts. Some shoppers clutched bleeding wounds. Others were frozen in shock, their eyes darting to the aisles where gunshots had just echoed moments before. Over police radios, voices called out, "Suspect is male, mid-30s, wearing a black hoodie and jeans, armed with a long gun. Shots fired." It wasn't just about stopping the shooter, it was about saving lives. Paramedics and fire crews were staged outside, ready to rush in once the threat was neutralized. Inside, officers moved in a diamond formation, clearing each aisle methodically. The surveillance advantage. What officers didn't know was that they had an unexpected ally: the store's security cameras. From the Target control room, loss prevention staff fed real-time updates to the command post outside, describing the suspect's movements. He was in the electronics section, then sporting goods. Then he stopped near the back exit, as if deciding whether to run. The footage showed something chilling. The gunman appeared calm, even methodical. He wasn't panicked. He was hunting. Public on lockdown. By now, the entire surrounding area had been placed on lockdown. Schools within a 1-mile radius were told to shelter in place. Local businesses locked their doors and pulled customers away from windows. Social media exploded with posts from people near the scene, some pleading for updates, others sharing shaky cell phone videos of officers sprinting toward the building. The Austin Police Department issued a public alert. Active shooter at Target on N. Lamar. Stay clear of the area. Law enforcement on scene. The words active shooter carried a weight no one wanted to feel, but in America they were all too familiar. The suspect's last stand. At 4:12 p.m., just 11 minutes after the first shot was fired, officers located the suspect near the rear stockroom. Body cam audio captured the tense confrontation. Officer, police, drop the weapon. Suspect, silence. Officer, drop it now. Suspect, raises rifle. The standoff lasted less than 5 seconds. Officers fired, striking the suspect multiple times. He collapsed against a row of boxes and slumped to the ground. Medics rushed in, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. Unanswered questions. The immediate threat was over, but for investigators, the work was only beginning. Who was this man? Why Target? Why Austin? And most pressing, was he acting alone? Inside his backpack, officers found more ammunition, duct tape, and a handwritten note. The note was smeared with blood, but legible enough to reveal fragments of his thoughts. Hints of anger, paranoia, and revenge against unnamed enemies. The note's final line read, "This is only the beginning." A city in shock. By sundown, Austin was on edge. Vigils began forming outside the store, candles flickering against the warm summer air. Local news anchors spoke in somber tones, replaying footage of terrified shoppers being escorted out by SWAT teams. The mayor issued a statement calling the shooting a tragedy that will leave scars on our city for years to come. But behind the public grief, detectives were digging deeper. The shooter's identity would soon raise even more disturbing questions and reveal that the attack had been brewing for much longer than anyone realized. As the echo of gunfire faded into the night, the streets around the Target store became a chaotic blend of sirens, flashing lights, and terrified whispers. Law enforcement agencies moved swiftly, sealing off the area and locking down nearby neighborhoods. Residents were told to shelter in place as heavily armed SWAT officers fanned out in search of the suspect. The shooter, described by witnesses as a tall man in dark clothing, had vanished into the shadows before police could establish a perimeter. His escape felt calculated, almost rehearsed, and that sent a chilling message to investigators. This was no random act of rage. Coordinated chaos. The Austin Police Department worked alongside federal agents, pooling resources to track down the suspect. Drones scanned the rooftops, while K-9 units scoured back alleys and abandoned buildings. A special tactical team reviewed security footage from the Target store, nearby businesses, and traffic cameras, looking for any sign of the gunman's direction. But the footage revealed something disturbing. Moments before the attack, the shooter had been seen pacing in the parking lot, watching customers go in and out. He was waiting. He was hunting. The trail of clues. Detectives followed a series of breadcrumbs. A dropped magazine from the shooter's rifle was traced back to an online purchase under a fake name. A witness reported seeing a black pickup truck speeding away minutes after the massacre, its license plate partially obscured by mud. The most crucial lead came from a cell phone ping picked up by nearby towers. Investigators believed the suspect was hiding in a semi-rural area just outside the city limits. The terrain there, dense woods and scattered farmhouses, would make the search dangerous. Public panic and pressure. News outlets broadcast continuous updates, and social media exploded with theories, false leads, and fear. Some residents refused to leave their homes. Parents pulled their children from school. The entire city seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for word of an arrest. Pressure mounted on law enforcement to bring the shooter in quickly. This wasn't just about solving a crime. It was about restoring a community's sense of safety, closing in. By the third day of the manhunt, police believed they had located the suspect's hideout, a dilapidated barn on an abandoned property. SWAT surrounded the building in the dead of night, moving in silence. Inside, they found disturbing evidence: ammunition, tactical gear, a bulletproof vest, and handwritten notes detailing grievances against society. But the shooter himself was gone. It was a crushing blow. The suspect was still out there, armed, dangerous, and possibly planning another attack. Austin wasn't safe yet. In the days following the Target Store Massacre, Austin was no longer the same city. The hum of live music and the casual friendliness of strangers felt dulled, replaced by a shared sense of grief and unease. What had once been a symbol of safety, a public shopping space, had become a painful reminder of how quickly life could be stolen. The makeshift memorial outside the Target grew by the hour. Candles flickered at night, their small flames trembling in the wind. Bouquets of flowers, many still wrapped in grocery store plastic, were laid out alongside handwritten notes. There were pictures of the victims, smiling in happier times, and stuffed animals left by children who didn't fully understand what had happened, only that someone's mommy or daddy wasn't coming home. Families of the victims found themselves thrown into a whirlwind of grief, legal proceedings, and public attention they never asked for. News cameras followed them from funerals to court hearings. Every day felt like reopening the wound. Some spoke out immediately, calling for tighter gun laws and security measures in public spaces. Others stayed silent, trying to process the unthinkable in private. The survivors' struggle. For the survivors, life was no longer measured in hours and minutes, but in flashbacks and panic triggers. A sudden loud noise in a grocery store could send someone diving to the floor. The smell of coffee in a cafe could instantly transport a witness back to the moment before the shots rang out. Counselors and trauma specialists were brought in to help survivors, employees, and first responders cope with the mental scars. But healing was uneven. Some returned to work within weeks, determined to reclaim a sense of normalcy. Others never set foot inside a store again. One employee, Maria, who had been hiding with 2 customers in a stockroom during the shooting, became an advocate for active shooter training in workplaces. "We didn't know what to do," she later said. "We just prayed and waited. That shouldn't be the only plan people have." The legal aftermath. The gunman, now in custody, faced multiple counts of murder and aggravated assault. Prosecutors made it clear they intended to seek the maximum penalty under Texas law. In court, the victims' families sat just feet away from the man who had forever altered their lives. Some stared at him with fury, others couldn't bear to look. The trial drew national attention, reigniting debates about America's gun laws, mental health system, and the troubling frequency of mass shootings in places once thought safe. Gun violence in America, a pattern that can't be ignored. Austin wasn't the first city to suffer such a tragedy, and it likely wouldn't be the last. Statistics showed that the U.S. was averaging more than 1 mass shooting a week. And while each incident was unique in its details, the aftermath was painfully familiar. Shock, grief, calls for change, and then silence until the next one. Community leaders, activists, and everyday citizens began hosting town halls and vigils, determined not to let this shooting fade into the background noise of America's gun violence crisis. Some pushed for practical changes, metal detectors in large retail stores, increased mental health support, and community policing. Others pushed for legislative reform, knowing it would be a long and contentious battle. A city's resolve. Months later, the Target store quietly reopened. For some, it was a sign of resilience, a city refusing to let violence define it. For others, it was a painful reminder of everything that had been lost. Still, Austin came together in ways it hadn't before. The victims' names were read aloud each year on the anniversary of the shooting. Scholarships were created in their honor. Survivors spoke at schools, warning students about the reality of mass violence and advocating for safety measures. The massacre had taken lives, but it had also ignited something powerful, a refusal to be numb. Austin would carry the scars forever, but it would also carry the lessons. As one father of a victim said at a vigil, holding a candle against the Texas night, "They're gone, but they're not forgotten. Not here, not ever." Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell.